It is great to be back, and 2021 is shaking up to be a year full of surprises for us, so it's going to be great to review each of the races. Of course, if you are new, welcome to this series of race reviews where we put all the races in the 2021 season calendar up against each other to see which one's the worst and which one is the best. And, as always, Cass, how was the start of our first race?
It certainly didn't start off as a normal race, that's for sure. We had drama from the very first lap, as in the formation lap. Of course, we're referring to the fact that Sergio's car seemingly just stopped on track. No real clue what happened there, but luckily he was able to get it restarted, but this means he had to start from the pit lane.
Yeah, he already didn't have a great qualifying, but to be sent back to the back of the grid, probably not the best way to start your Red Bull debut.
But, you know, I have faith in Sergio. I didn't have a doubt in my mind he was going to be able to make up those positions.
Now that the race is finally getting underway, what happens first, Cass? What catches your eye?
Obviously, Max just getting a great start. We saw him angled towards the right. We saw Hamilton aim towards the left. Max seemed to just have that little bit of edge, but you know who really impressed me? Charles Leclerc. Once again, coming out of nowhere. And it's not like the Ferrari has been absolutely absent this weekend, but for him to just immediately pulling off those overtakes, really nice to see, and he really held on for pretty much the entire race.
Another driver that really impressed me at the start was Vettel. He gained a total of 6 places off the opening lap, so I really thought he had his groove back, but the race took a different turn for him later on.
Another driver whose race took a turn much earlier was none other than Nikita Mazepin, who seemingly binned it into the wall less than 1 lap into the race. Of course, this brings out a safety car, so we're wondering, is Max gonna be able to pick up that lead yet again? Is there gonna be more chaos? Well, the answer is yes, but it wasn't for the driver that we expected. All of a sudden, you see the front wing of an AlphaTauri just making its way along the side of the track. Massively impacted Pierre Gasly's race. It was so strange though, because it looked like he barely clipped the back of Ricciardo's rear tire, and his front wing just went flying.
Next, our main focus goes over to a battle between 2 McLarens and 1 Ferrari. Charles is trying to hold off his position from these two, but it's a lot of back and forth on the track, which was fantastic to watch.
They were going so hard and so tight into those corners. At times, it really looked like Lando and Charles were going to clip each other's tires, but it was some 10 out of 10 racing out there.
So there's a lot of different elements happening at this point. Sergio's making tons of moves in the back. Hamilton might be going a bit wide on turn 4.
One thing I certainly was not expecting to see was the super early pit stops. Alonso came in first, and this just seemed to cause a chain reaction with the other teams. All of a sudden, you had 4 or 5 cars coming into the pits at once.
But when looking at the results, it clearly looks like the 2 pit stop strategy was the one to go with. Probably the most shocking element in the first half was when Mercedes went and tried the undercut on Verstappen. You have the commentators saying Max has to come in for his pits to cover it, but Red Bull's confident enough and just leaves Max out there to go long.
At least one cool thing with the pit stops though is that you had so many cars coming so close to each other as they were exiting the pit lane that we got some great battles, and one that I am thinking of in particular was the 3-way battle into the first corner between Carlos, Vettel, and Fernando. They were going side by side, giving each other next to no space. I was really anticipating that we were going to see a collision, but it was some fantastic racing.
So that brings us to the end of the first half here, so it's time to score it. Cass, what'd you think?
As for my excitement, I scored it a 5, which some people might say is a little bit low, but I want to keep things a little bit neutral. This is the first race of the season. I was stoked to see some of the midfield battle, but ultimately after the very first corner, we just saw that it was going to be Red Bull and Mercedes running away with it as per usual. I think it's a good way to start, but I'm excited to see some growth. For racing, however, I did score this a bit higher at a 7 because wow, we got some fantastic overtakes. I loved what we were seeing between the Ferraris and the McLarens, and then you had Perez trying to make his way through the field. Finally, for drama, I also scored this a 7 just because you had some first lap incidents, you had some safety cars, virtual safety cars, drama with pit stops, and why is everyone coming in so soon? It was just a little bit more elevated for me, and I liked it. So when combining these together, this brings it out at roughly a 6.3, therefore I'm gonna bump it up to a 6.5.
Whereas on my side, I might have been a little bit more generous to this race. Maybe I was just really excited to see racing back on my TV. That's why I scored my excitement as a 7. I was happy to see the cars on track, and of course, who wouldn't be excited when first place is up for grabs and it's this close? And with the racing, I was actually super impressed with what I was seeing on track for the first race. I ended up scoring it a 9, which is a big number right off the start. Maybe that had something to do with the pit stops, like you said. It had a lot of the drivers going back in the order and having to gain those places back, so it just seemed like there was a lot of quantity of racing, and I thought the quality of it was actually pretty good at this track. And in terms of the drama, I also ended up scoring it a 7. I found it very dramatic right at the start, all the way up to the halfway point, because I didn't know what was gonna happen. Which, when you tally up all my scores, it comes out to a 7.5, which I'm quite happy with and I think is a very fair score for the first half.
Jumping straight into the second half, I think it can pretty much be defined by the whole chase between Max and Hamilton. It really kick-started when Max took his second pit stop, which was a sub 2 second, and immediately you knew it was gonna be tight between these two. But in the meantime, we did get to see some really incredible battles in the midfield.
We had the battle between Russell and Kimi, and it really seems like that Alfa Romeo has the upper hand this season against the other back markers.
I gotta hand it to Kimi though, he always plays fair, he always gives space, because there was a couple of times going into corners where I wasn't sure if they were gonna touch. I honestly think that if it weren't for his experience, we easily could have seen a collision between these two.
Definitely, but we did see a collision between two other drivers later on in that race, and that was of course with Vettel and Ocon.
Obviously this was a massive disappointment. I was really hoping to see Vettel just pull out a much better result, especially after a terrible qualifying session. Things were just not going great for Alpine today. Obviously even worse for Alonso, who had to retire the car due to a suspected brake issue.
Another driver who had a poor experience in the pits was Valtteri. He had a very slow pit stop and his team was unable to get one of the tires off, and they dropped the car earlier than anticipated. It was a full 10 seconds, but fortunately for him, he was far enough ahead in third place that it didn't affect his position.
From here on out, our focus completely was shifted towards the battle for the lead as that gap was getting smaller and smaller.
We finally get to see what Max has in store for his move on how he's going to get past Hamilton. He ended up going way too wide on turn 4. He ended up giving the place back to Hamilton a few turns later. So now Max had to go back on the attack to try and make up that place once again. However, his tires are much cooler and he sort of was drifting around on the track. It seemed like he might have just needed one more lap to make another move, but the race ended there with 56 laps and Hamilton ended up getting his 96th win.
We'll have to see how this plays out for future races. Hopefully with Sergio having some better luck next time around, we can really see a game of strategy to the fullest extent.
So when looking at scoring the second half, it ended up being a bit lower on my side, but my excitement was still up there at a 9 because of this close wheel-to-wheel battle for first place. However, my racing was a bit lower. I ended up scoring that only a 6. I was still happy with the wheel-to-wheel battles I was seeing, but the quantity wasn't there this time. And overall, the drama outside of the top 2 places, there wasn't much going on, so I ended up scoring that a 6 as well. Scoring my second half actually a 7.
Whereas on my side, the excitement was actually considerably lower at a 5, and this is because I just had a gut feeling the entire time that Max was not going to be able to pull off that overtake. Otherwise, anything else in the race, we just weren't seeing it. So it's hard to get excited about something that is not being shown on camera. So that's why it was a little bit neutral for me, but then this also impacted the racing itself, which I scored a 6, purely because we were only seeing the fight between the leaders, which, look, it was fantastic. But I know there must have been something else going on out there. We saw the positions going up and down, but we just didn't see it. But I blame that more on the broadcasting than anything else. And then finally for drama, I also put that at a 6 purely because of slow pit stops, very weird incidents, and then Max going wide, Hamilton going wide. Was it gonna come down to the wire? We thought yes, but actually no, not really. So that puts my overall score at roughly a 5.5 for the second half.
So when combining our scores together, the total score for the 2021 Bahrain Grand Prix is a 6.75. If you're ever curious to see what we look like while we're watching one of these races, be sure to check out the video in the top right corner, where we were fortunate enough to feature on Veloce's channel for their Backseat Driver series.
You'll have to let us know your thoughts. Did this race meet your expectations? Did it surpass everything you were hoping for? Or are you still wanting a little bit more from that top tier battle?
We'll be back with another race review in 3 weeks' time for the race in Imola. Of course, though, we'll be posting videos every week, so don't forget to subscribe down below and leave this video a like if you've enjoyed it.
As per usual, make sure to follow us on our social media at CCF1 channel to keep the conversation going.
And we will catch you in the next video.
Bye!